Now it's working. Okay, good. So I hope you still have a bit of energy left. I'm going to try to speed run this. So as Andrei mentioned, I have been working with a focus on data labeling operations for autonomous vehicles. This is a long-running project. It's been already a few years that this is going, and we are improving every year. And you will see that my focus is primarily on traffic sign recognition. So in this presentation, you will also see a lot of examples coming from this area, although I will try to cover the whole threats in autonomous driving as generally as I can. Okay. And besides this, about me, what I also wanted to share is that on a personal level, I am very interested in anything art-related. So that is exactly why tonight I want to share with you my recent favorite artist that I found, this person from Glasgow, who is putting up around the city these fake traffic signs or modifying existing traffic signs. Exactly. So the question is, we took a moment to look at these and to process and to realize, wait, it's not a real traffic sign. What would an autonomous vehicle do in this case? And even if this person is, clearly well-intentioned and probably just wants to make people laugh and so on, the same mechanic with having a element that looks real enough to be a bait as a traffic sign is the heart of the most serious vulnerabilities that we can have in autonomous driving. So this is what we will talk about today. In general, I have 4 areas in my presentation. Talk a bit about the security landscape in machine learning, a bit about what's data labeling, why is it important, a bit about supply chain security, and hopefully I will just leave you with some good practices from the point of view of product management. So traditional software, we all know it's more like a locked room. You know exactly what's inside because you wrote the code to it. In AI and machine learning, things are very different. I would dare compare it more like raising a child, right? You set some boundaries, you provide examples, and then you just hope it learns the right lessons. Question is, what happens when your AI is learning the wrong lesson? What if somebody is intentionally teaching it completely wrong things? This is the main challenge, and this happens because the behavior is hard-coded. This is not, the behavior is not hard-coded, it's something that it's learned through the data. And the most impacted domains here are these autonomous vehicles, and of course anything related to medical diagnosis and so on. So let's imagine this whole machine learning pipeline as a supply chain from a factory. Imagine something very traditional. You have the raw materials, which is the data. That gets processed through the factory floor, which is the training area. And at the end, you have a final product. This is the deployed model that ends up in our vehicles. And these attacks can happen at any of these 3 stages. Firstly, in the raw material phase, this is the data collection. We could basically poison the ingredients before they reach into the training phase. You can manipulate the sensors, you can inject fake data, or simply steal private information. On the factory floor, in the training phase, you could corrupt the whole manufacturing process, meaning slip malicious examples in the training data that the model learns afterwards. You could plant backdoors that activate in specific conditions, or even reverse engineer the recipe for the whole model. At the marketplace level, when the model is deployed, you could attack the finished product. And this is exactly what we saw with these fake traffic signs before. You can have real-world modifications of objects that would fool the model and create bigger problems. And every point is a potential failure. And these, aren't hypothetical threats. They have already happened for a very long time, I would say. I can share with you some quick examples from the research environment as early as 2017, where we had a team of researchers that were just modifying some images, adding noise to them, very subtle modifications, impossible to see with the human eye, but they convinced the machine learning model to recognize a panda as a gibbon. And they look very different, of course. And from 2020 onwards, we already have systems that, face recognition systems that are easily bypassed with printed photos. And an example from my area of expertise, traffic signs, we have a study in 2018 where researchers placed a very small sticker on a stop sign, causing the model to recognize that sign as a speed limit. So of course the consequences are very gravely because the car, instead of stopping, it was speeding up to the indicated speed limit. So we've seen that the attacks are real, right? And now the question doesn't get anymore if this could happen or not. It's what can we do about it? And the answer, I think, starts rather somewhere unexpected. It's not in the model or in the pipeline or the deployment infrastructure or so on. It already starts at the data. So before we can secure an AI system, we need to secure the data we're using for it. And this is why we have these 4 non-negotiable principles. We need to make sure that the data has integrity, so has been tampered with. The data has confidentiality, meaning we need to always protect sensitive data. Availability, we need to have access to the right data in the right moment in time where we need it. And authenticity. Of course, the data sources must always be verified. And we have some regulatory landscape for this in both EU and US. So before an AI model can recognize, let's say, a stop sign, because I've been using this example, what happens is that firstly, a human has to teach it what is a stop sign, how does it look like, where is it placed on the road, why is it applicable to us on that highway or not. And this whole process is called data labeling. This is where the raw sensor data becomes the ground truth. And in short terms, AI model learns like this is a traffic sign, a stop sign, this is a pedestrian, a bicycle, a vehicle, and so on. And the issue comes that if we have mistakes in this labeled data, the model will obviously learn the wrong things. So what do labelers do? Actually, labelers are highly trained individuals that annotate millions of images and various inputs from different types of sensors, including LiDAR, radar, and camera, in both 2D and 3D environments. And this whole thing is quite a big operation. I know it sounds a bit routine, but the reality is that it has to be flawless, because even if we label something wrong in 1% of the case, we already planted a backdoor that could be activated in the real environment and exploited. And this is exactly why the whole process of quality assurance is not anymore about just hitting some targets and we have a quality of 98% or something like that. It's not a production metric anymore. It's a matter of security. So we need to make sure that the data is properly verified always. So now I would like to talk a bit what happens if someone intentionally try to break your model. These type of attacks come usually in 2 forms. These are the digital attacks that I've briefly mentioned earlier, with this manipulating of the image with noise, transformations, scaling, and so on. And the physical attacks, these are the real-world modifications of various objects. Yep. Stickers, graffiti, patches, patterns, and so on. And this is why they are so effective. Machine learning models don't understand the world as we do, or not yet. So they learn patterns. And the moment you know the pattern, it means you can exploit it. So how do you defend against an attack you have not seen yet, or not even sure how it's going to look like? The universal answer is that you need to train your model for it. This whole process is called adversarial training, and it means you deliberately expose your model to this type of adversarial data, so the model will learn to recognize it and resist it. In very simple terms, the model at the end should know that this stop sign with graffiti on it is still a stop sign. The stop sign with patches, stickers, is still a stop sign. The one that is, weirdly rotated, like it happens in many cases here on our roads, is still a stop sign. It applies to us, and so on. And there is, of course, a trade-off here. what we have observed in practice is that usually models who are this adversarial trained quite good perform a bit worse on perfectly clean data sets. But, you know, it's, I would say, a bit the equivalent if you're wearing an armor, right? You're definitely much safer, but a bit less agile. So now you've secured your data, you harden your model, you have your adversarial training done, but there still might be a quite important thing that you're missing, and this is the supply chain security. So what's happening here? This means that every third-party service you use, this includes the labeling suppliers that often are other companies in themselves, the cloud infrastructure, open source libraries, all of them are potential attack vectors. So if an attacker maybe cannot break through your front door, it will definitely try one of your vendor's doors. And we actually have a real-life example from earlier April, last month. We had a security breach that was affecting a very widely used JavaScript library. What happened, there were some malicious versions published with the purpose of exfiltrating data. They also had an auto-destruct mechanism. And these very popular JavaScript libraries were actually used in most of our supplier tools. So 2 days we had to shut down everything. We fixed it, it was contained, and we had the right tools in place to not have it become a bigger issue. But it's just a signal for all of us to be aware that these things actually happen, even if it doesn't seem so likely. So, and you know, outsourcing labeling work is actually a very common practice. So we have specific companies with the right talent pool who are good at doing this. So that's why a lot of the main manufacturers work with them. And what happens if one of them is actually affected? It could mean that all your training data, including sensitive information, because all those data has GPS, VIN numbers, and so on, sensitive info, this could be exfiltrated. Worse, an attacker could also slip malicious labels inside your data, and you could not even find them until the model is deployed. So each link in the chain is a potential attack vector. So what can we do here? When we select a third-party labeling service, we need to be very careful of the steps that we take. So we cannot just go on references on, I don't know, Toby has a good company, I'm going to work with him because so on, right? So we need to look at their certifications, and we need to look at their whole pipeline, their data handling process, who has access to the data, when, what security logs do they have, can they prove everything, and especially what is their incident response plan. Will they notify us in hours, not days, and so on. And of course, we have contractual frameworks for all of this. But the main takeaway here is that we never stopped at the contract level. We need to have a continuous monitoring of whatever the supplier is doing. So we could also, for example, watermark the data to trace for leaks. We could also conduct random samplings at all times. And in general, we always have to maintain this right to audit whatever the supplier is doing at any time. And you know, every vendor, in the end of the day, it's a partnership. We want to work with them for a long time. But in the same time, we know that is also a potential risk. So we just have to learn to manage it both. And security is not just about prevention. So after looking at what the vendor does and how they handle the data, we also have to look internally at our systems. How are we handling the data? Do we log everything? Do we have this forensic evidence of what happened to the data in the pipeline? And specifically, we need to know who accessed the data and what data sets were used for which model. And another important point is monitor the model performance. So depending on which model we use and for what we train it, we have different predictions for its performance. And the moment we see something out of the ordinary there, it could mean a potential attack, and we need to investigate immediately. And of course, for all of this, we need a clear incident response plan that also includes proper communication to everybody affected, all these forensic capabilities, and so on. So, lessons learned at the end. From my side, as a product manager in all my career, not only here on working on autonomous driving, I think I've learned that security is something very critical. It should definitely not be bolted in at the end of any kind of product you're doing. This should be part of every roadmap from the beginning. It should have its own resources, its own budget dedicated and included in all the discussions. And if we're looking specifically at AI and machine learning, what does this look like in practice? There's 4 main areas in the machine learning lifecycle, and security has a critical role in all of them. In the design phase, I think it means you need to think about the security before you start writing any kind of code. Then in the data phase, it means you definitely need to try to train your model, even for the attacks you have not seen. In the model phase, you have to always be prepared for everything that comes, even unknown, and always treat every label as the potential attack vector. And in the operational phase, it means you never have to assume that you're done. It's not like the security chapter ever closes and that's it. And I think these are not all theoretical ideas. They're rather principles that stand between us having a reliable and secure AI model or something that can be really easily manipulated, including with some stickers on signs. So I think at the end of the evening, what I would like to say that today we stand at a crossroads. So AI systems are present in our life, whether we like it or not. They are in our vehicles, in our medical system, in our critical infrastructure, and so on. We just need to adapt. And my main lessons are that security has to be built in, not retrofitted at the end. For me, data labeling is a critical security control point that sometimes it's overlooked, and actually many threats originate at this level. The adversarial robustness for your model is not something optional, it's something mandatory, especially in these high-stakes domains. The supply chains, all of them are attack vectors, so we need to vet our partners and make sure we have a continuous monitoring of everything we do. And of course, privacy and security are inseparable. And I think most important, if I want one takeaway from this presentation, is that security is not the job of the security team. It's the job of everyone involved in this pipeline, from the first data labeler, the product manager, the machine learning engineer, and even the high-level executive. Everybody has a role to play in this. So coming back to our dear Glasgow artist, you know, he just wanted to make people smile, but you need to keep in mind that the next person modifying a sign might not be so well-intentioned. So it's our duty to make sure that we build the models that will actually know the difference. Thank you.